Good evening, everyone. Hello. It's great to see people sharing in the comments about something that we don't often get a chance to really unpack and explore and kind of blow the lid off. Blow the lid off anger. Yeah. So lots of comments to all of us, and lots of comments just to me. Keep my anger inside, difficult to express. I totally get that. Yeah, awesome. Great. Can everybody hear me okay? Having some issues with my microphone lately. You can give me a yes. Great. Good. And we will just get started in a couple of minutes. Awesome. I'll be right back.
Hi there.
Hello.
Hey, could you let me in?
I thought I did.
The video part. There we go. Oh.
Okay. I guess we'll let you in tonight.
I haven't moved from this chair. Yeah.
Since our class this morning.
Yeah. It's been... yeah, absolutely.
Okay, well, I'm excited to get into tonight's topic. It's taken me a little bit of time to kind of prepare for tonight, and I realized something that was shared with me quite recently, and that was that anxiety or fear and excitement show up in the body in the same way. And because I haven't actually done a Monday night webinar myself for quite a while now, I think I've always been interviewing other people. And so I just wanted to share that with everybody before we start tonight, that I am feeling a combination of excitement, mostly excitement, I think, and a little bit of anxiety, which is it's unusual for me on a Monday night webinar. So the value of noticing and naming how you feel, and already I feel better just sharing that. So thank you. Because tonight we're going to dive into a topic that's not talked about a lot, although we see the manifestations of it all around us, inside of us, in our relationships, in our families, certainly in our communities and in our societies. Yet it's got a lot of misunderstandings, a lot of myths around it. And I'm looking forward to tonight, hopefully having a really kind of a discovery, an exploration with all of us here tonight, and about anger, how it shows up, what blocks it, and how we can get anger to perhaps move a little bit more fluidly throughout our bodies and our lives, so that it doesn't tend to get either stuck or frozen or erupt in explosive episodes or explosive rage, or in ways that end up not making us feel any better. So that's my hope for tonight. And so I'm gonna, without further ado, turn it to Mark Lawrence from the Pain Clinic, just to get us started here.
Yeah, I just want to welcome everybody on behalf of the Bill Melms Clinic, and thank you very much to Madeline for taking on tonight's group and coming up with a great presentation. I'm looking forward to hearing what you have to say. And just just acknowledging that anger can be one of those emotions, very common emotions people have in chronic pain, probably coming out of frustration, not only for the lack of help or perceived cure for what they have, relief of their symptoms. I'm not surprised that patients with chronic pain have anger, but I think it also has far wider applications. I mean, anger is a part of many people's daily struggles who even aren't in pain. Anger comes out in so many ways. And if it's not managed and dealt with, it can really be very, very harmful to relationships, pushing people further away from you, and creating a lot of disharmony in interpersonal relationships. So I'd like to hear more about what you have to say about that. I think it's really applicable to patients in pain, particularly. Very commonly experienced by us as practitioners, that patients express feelings of anger, frustration, and I think it's all wrapped up in that anxiety, frustration, not knowing what to do, how to be managed. Is there something we can do to help them? And just their continuous battle with chronic pain.
Yeah, absolutely. Very, very well said for people in pain, that anger is part of everybody's whole range of emotions, but with an ongoing chronic condition for a number of reasons, like you named, the frustration with getting help, the frustration with maybe lack of sleep, not knowing what's happening, the uncertainty can certainly be underlying it. And it's also one of the stages of grief that we move through as life changes, sometimes quite dramatically, particularly in the face of pain that persists. So when we can move through it, absolutely, like you said, then we can think more clearly. We can know that it's normal, and we can start to release it, so we can move on to the next stage or the next level, or into life as it is right now.
Yeah. So again, welcome to all the participants. Please, let's just respect one another's confidentiality. Sometimes people might want to comment or say something of a personal nature to them. We just ask that you respect people's confidentiality and look at this as a group medical visit where, what stays within the group, what gets said here stays within the group. So yeah, thanks. I'm going to turn it over to Madeline.
Great. All right, thanks. Okay, I will keep an eye on the chat as much as I can as comments come up and or questions. Yeah, so let's talk about anger. And I can see already people sharing and having some insights into their own experience of anger, that tends to make pain less able to deal with, to get control of, either the pain and the anger. And music can very much help, or the distraction or the activity of something like watching TV. So as we begin tonight, this is what I'm hoping to move through, to start talking about myths and blocks that we might have to feeling anger in our bodies. We're going to talk a little bit about the purpose of anger and the relationship, as you probably already know quite well, between anger and pain, and that very kind of forceful, alive and active energy of anger, when it's not channeled, can get stuck as what I call a survival stress in the nervous system. We're going to look at some of the root causes of anger, which is really important, and it's an important part of getting to know your anger and how it comes up and why. And also when anger can feel dangerous, or it can feel out of control or scary when we haven't learned, perhaps we haven't been taught how to manage it, and how to retrain your system for a safe release of anger in a way that's going to get you the results that you want, to perhaps get those unmet needs expressed and met. So my intention tonight is to leave you with tools to harness the power of your anger as your ally in your own health and in your life. And that might kind of turn on its head the beliefs that you might have about anger right now. But there's not one of us that is on this earth that is not capable in some way of feeling the emotion of anger. So it is here for a purpose, and for a very important purpose. So before we start, I just want to kind of, I'm just going to ask you to ask yourself, as we move into this discussion tonight, a question such as how resourced do I feel tonight? And what I mean by resourced is how, I suppose the word would be how safe or how stable do I feel tonight? And there's no right or wrong to this. It's not like, oh, I don't have the resources tonight. I'm not going to do this. That might not be necessarily the case, but to just notice in yourself, how resourced do I feel tonight? And that's a little bit of information about your nervous system and where you're at 6:10 on a Monday night, or 7:10 for some other people in different time zones. It's just information about where your nervous system is at tonight. Perhaps you're a little tired or a little bit sleepy, a little bit hungry. And what I want to do is start this discussion with a safe container. Not that we're going dangerous places, but this is one of the practices that's going to be weaved in through the talk tonight. So wherever you are, wherever you're sitting or lying or standing, hopefully not driving, just allow yourself to just take 3 deeper, slower breaths. And as you do that, with your exhale, I invite you to let it out with a sigh, with a release. A release of your breath. Maybe a release of muscle tension, and a release of your day so far. And if you're in your own space, you can let it out even with a sound. And if that felt, supportive, if that felt good for your body or your nervous system, you can keep going with a few more and let go of muscle tension in your jaw, your shoulders, your chest, belly, maybe your arms, legs. If you can, relax your scalp. Maybe even your brow. Is your brow furrowed, like you're working really hard tonight? And can you just relax, even the skin on your face, to soften and receive rather than working at the information? So as we breathe, as you might know by now, we're going to look at breath and then our body. Already I can feel muscle tension relaxing and melting, softening a bit, and that might not be true for everyone here. The other thing you can do right now is just to shake it out a little bit. Shake your arms and your legs. If you have any buildup of tension that's accumulated throughout the day, feel free to move around your room, even, shaking your head from side to side, maybe rolling out your shoulders. And this is going to prove to be very important as we move through the webinar tonight. Right? Shake it in and settle into where you're sitting. And those tiny movements can create a ripple effect. And the last thing is mind. So just orient to your space. So if you're really focused on the screen right now, you might stretch around and just check out the corners of your room, look behind you, maybe look out your window, it might be dark outside, and just focus in on some of the objects that are farther away in your space. And there's a reason why we do all of these things, as we will get to as we move along. It all triggers something called the vagus nerve that lets our body, our nervous system, and our mind know that right now, this organism is in a safe space. Okay, so I want to start tonight's class with a story, and I'm going to start with a personal story. And this question that we often hear, or we even ask ourselves, or we ask other people, why are you so angry? Can you feel the energy of that question? Why are you so angry? It feels, there might be a word that comes up for you. It feels kind of blamey. It feels like at fault, like there's something wrong with you or something wrong with me. And I want to share a story about something that happened, I want to say 2 decades ago, where I was traveling back home to visit my parents who were elderly at the time. And I'll always remember this because I had gone to sleep in my family home, and about 3 a.m, I could hear my mother stomping around. And I got up because it woke me up, and I got up and I went out, and she was obviously in distress and very agitated, looked, stressed or not herself. And she said to me, I don't know why I'm so angry. And at that time, before I had really explored this myself, I said, Mom, I don't know why either. I don't know why, because on the surface and around about her, there was no tangible reason to be angry. So as I reflected on that myself over time, what I realized was that looking back, and you can trace this back in your own life or even in someone that you know, looking back, she suffered with chronic migraines. She had a diagnosis of fibromyalgia, and she was a creative. She was an artist. Over time, because of her condition, because of shaking, tremors, she wasn't able to pursue her life passion anymore. And this cut off her life that she dedicated to raising children, which nothing wrong with that, but there was a part of her that was never quite fulfilled. And on top of that, being diagnosed with breast cancer a number of times, there was a number of factors. And so this question that she asked me, or that she said, I don't know why I'm so angry. In reflection, I have a better question. And there's a reason why I put the picture of an iceberg. What we see is the top of the iceberg. But when we take a deep dive down, we can often find reasons to ask or to say, of course you are angry. Of course you're angry. Or why are you not more angry? And I don't mean to start the webinar that way, saying we should all be like just really angry people, because that does not feel good and that's not good for our health. But rather to ask the question, why am I angry? And as we explore that, we might come to this conclusion of like, of course you're angry. Life, loss, changes, all produce this current, this ripple effect throughout our bodies. And often there is, at that time at least, there was no discussion. There was not a lot of self-help books. There wasn't a lot of support around how to cope with, deal with, release, feel, and express anger. And as a result, life can feel very unfair and create a lot of tension and a lot of pain and a lot of distress in our bodies. Yeah. So the question then comes, is there something that we can do now? And the answer is yes. The answer is yes. To make a plan. If there is something to do, then we make a plan to do it. And you'll see how this moves throughout the webinar. And if there is no action at that point to take, then the answer is no. You might start to feel the grief, the sadness, the loss, and the pain underneath it. So now it can heal. Okay. So just to check in, I have someone saying that they can't see anything, just a picture of a mic saying that it's muted. Are you guys seeing slides? I just want to check in. Are you seeing slides, blue slides? Yes, yes. Okay. So to the person that can't, you might want to close that picture of the mic saying it's muted, because there might be the slides underneath. Yeah, sorry about that. Oh, I hope it works. Oh, okay. All right. So we can ask ourselves, is there something now that I can do? If it's yes, then it's something to perhaps something that needs to be said, something that needs to be expressed to someone, something that needs to be protected, something that needs to be rectified. Thanks. It might be that your device is muted. So just check out under audio, different options under audio. Thank you. If the answer is no, there's nothing for me to do now, there's nothing left for me to do, then we might explore more of what is underneath the anger, the softer, more vulnerable emotions that are now asking perhaps to be healed. And how do we heal them? Through feeling them. So as we begin this, what comes up for you around anger? And it might be certain beliefs that you have around anger. It might be other feelings such as fear or shame or guilt that come up around the energy of anger. And I want to recognize this and unpack it, because we often have blocks and layers around anger that prevents us from truly expressing or feeling anger. And this is something that I call the prison guards. And prison guards are basically what can keep anger locked in a certain way in order to, I want to air quotes, keep us safe. And this is a great one. Ladies don't act that way. Ladies don't act that way. And that is something that is very much embedded in our society. Good girls don't get angry. Even good boys don't get angry. And we've learned this, and these are our prison guards that kind of stand at the gate of anger and believe that they are keeping us safe. Because when we were growing up, if we received that message, then it absolutely did not feel safe to express anger in your family. And even though it might have been, it might have been safe, but as a child, if you are risking the disapproval, the abandonment, the taking away of attention or love by expressing anger, then you can bet in your nervous system that it didn't feel safe. Turn the other cheek, someone else says. Turn the other cheek. Yes. So if you have been raised to turn the other cheek, you are going to turn with a whole lot of anger still resonating and rippling in your nervous system. Angry often without awareness. Yes, that's very, very common. That's probably more common than not. Angry without awareness. Anybody else feel that? Don't feel heard, unable to make visible the massive underwater iceberg of issues. I totally understand that. And that is what we're going to take a dive into today. And I'm going to give you some practices to start actually diving underwater. It's difficult as it's gone on for so long, somebody says. Yes, yes. So if you are that person out there right now that's saying, yeah, well, I know that this works for other people. I know that maybe other people that can deal with their anger, express or feel their anger, but it doesn't work for me. Or I'm too angry, or I'm too old, or I'm too much in pain, or I'm too whatever. I'm talking to you right now when I say this is also for you. And maybe this is especially for you. Okay. So often when it's gone on for decades, and I've worked with many people in pain and certainly many people around anger, that there isn't one person that is sitting here in a nervous system that doesn't have the ability to heal. And right now, even as you're sitting and listening, your nervous system is so busy healing right now. Your body is so busy healing right now, even if it doesn't feel that way. All right. So just to know, if you think you're the exception to this, you're not. You might just take a different route. All right. So as a child, I was told it can kill my dad, heart problems. Okay. So when things like that have been told to many people, if you get angry or if you act out, if you misbehave, don't talk back. In other words, don't express how you feel. It could kill your parent. That's a pretty strong threat. That is enough for any child, teenager, adult to turn inwards and feel guilty or afraid or ashamed of anger. So does it make sense to you that you would feel angry in your body, perhaps be afraid to express it? Or if you haven't been taught, if you have been, even as a child, told to go to your room and calm down, but nobody taught you how to calm down. We don't know these things. As a child, we calm down in the loving arms of a parent until we can learn how to do it ourselves. So if you've ever been told, and they did this in school, just calm down. As a child, it may be very confusing because there's something you're supposed to do, but you're not exactly sure how to do it. It can leave you feeling very helpless and confused. Okay? Nobody understands chronic pain, and that makes me feel angry and frustrated. And I would dive even deeper than that to the anger, or perhaps even, I'm totally reading into that, our sadness, loneliness of not feeling understood, not feeling heard, seen, validated, perhaps lonely in the experience of pain. These are all really, really valid emotions. So even as we start, I want you to take that safety break again. Take those 3 deep releasing breaths right now. Relax muscle tension. We're not pushing things away right now. We're creating our safe container. And if you want to, orient outside of yourself into your room. Okay. So we've already identified what some of our prison guards to anger are. And if you could imagine, anger being inside in a cage, and anger is angry. Anger is like that little Tasmanian devil. If that may be before some of your times, that little cartoon of the Tasmanian devil. It's revved up. Something is unfair. Something is unjust. And we have these prison guards or these beliefs around it that try to keep it in a cage because, man, oh man, if that thing gets out, God knows what will happen. So they might be beliefs such as anger is bad. I already mentioned good girls or boys don't get angry. There might be a fear over the intensity of it. There might be fear from past experiences or even past experiences of being hurt. And that can be, either growing up in an unstable or having, an explosive parent or caregiver, but it can also be growing up in a family where anger is not expressed. Okay. So if you grew up in a family that on the surface, everything looked pretty good, that I didn't hear any anger, I didn't see any anger, that can also lead to quite a fear of anger because it was something that was probably avoided. If everybody has experienced some anger in their body, there might be a felt sense of tension. There might be a look of gritted teeth that young kids pick up on really quickly. And there might be a feeling of avoiding any expression of anger. Shame around anger. If you've been shamed for feeling angry, that can be a prison guard. And I want to say at the same time that sometimes at the root of anger is shame. When there is, and shame is that feeling of not being good enough, perhaps when you make a mistake and you lash out at someone else, of feeling not worthy, those types of feelings that are actually quite common in human beings, but sometimes show up in our lives as an expression of anger. A fear of losing it. I'm going to lose it if I don't keep this anger locked up. If I start, I don't know that I'm going to stop. It can be quite a scary thought that actually I also hear quite a bit. If I dive in that pool, if I let that out of the cage, I don't know if I'm going to stop. And it's a valid, you will stop, but it's a valid fear because the way that it is expressed, we want it to be done in a healthy, safe way that it helps your nervous system rather than re-traumatizes it. They won't like me if I express an opinion, or if I'm not happy with something, or I express some anger. They won't like me, or people will think I'm crazy or unstable, if I don't agree or go with the flow or go along with the crowd. All right, so you might notice some of your own prison guards there. But what are your own prison guards, and how do they judge your anger? How do they judge, not maybe your anger either, or necessarily, but the feeling of anger. And you might notice these statements coming up, and this is what I would call bypassing anger. I just got to get rid of my anger. I got to get rid of it. Why can't I be less angry? So when you have that feeling of anger come up, why can't I be less angry? I'm overreacting. It's so stupid to be angry here in this situation. I'm overreacting. In other words, minimizing what is actually present for you in your body. And I'm going to encourage you as we move along to notice where you feel you're overreacting or you minimize what is happening in your body, because that also puts a lid on it, says, oh, this is stupid, but it's actually here. And there's actually nothing wrong with it being here. Okay? Hold on to that. It's their fault. If they didn't do that, I wouldn't feel so angry. So do you notice that that bypass of blame? So pointing outwards, it's their fault. They did this to me. It's not fair. Now, the facts may be that you were treated rudely, or you were ignored, or somebody cut you off in traffic. Something did happen. But the anger that rises in your body can only ever be your responsibility. And I'll tell you why that is, because it's your nervous system, and nobody can, we might get triggered throughout our lives, but each person is going to react to those triggers a little bit differently. And each person is going to be responsible for what rises in their reaction. So these are all quite effective ways to guard you from feeling the energy of anger that is normal, natural, energy giving when channeled in a healthy way. And, you know, sometimes I ask people, or ask myself, like, what would this world be like if there was no such thing as anger? And there's a good side to that, and there's also a flip side to that. So anger can often stay locked in a cage, or feel like it just goes around and round on a hamster wheel. So it feels like it gets locked in a cage, but does it? And how does anger leak out in other ways? Well, muscle tension is, you know, sometimes I've heard many stories of people going for massages or acupuncture, and with a release through shoulders and neck, also have a release of tears and a release of anger that's being held and stored in muscles, sometimes for a long, long time. It might explode over into an explosive rage. It certainly comes out in pain, in physical pain, because we'll talk about this. It activates in a part of the brain called the amygdala, which is where the threat of chronic pain also exists, right? In that same part of the brain. It's about the shape and size of an almond. And so when you've got anger and pain mixed up in the same parts, just like this boiling pot, it can trigger pain. Irritability, you know, kicking the dog, you know, the story of someone having a really stressful day at work. Perhaps you're dealing with a toxic boss or a supervisor or a coworker, and being unable to express it, coming home and taking it out on the dog or something else, someone else. Conflict doesn't get resolved. Picking fights, you know, when you feel unsettled and you pick fights in other people. The bitterness of resentment, anxiety, for sure, is like a lid being kept on something. Depression, and also addictions. Yeah, so just looking here, turning anger inwards allows a dis-ease to take control. And absolutely, Deb, there's been a, you know that, it sounds like, and there's also been a ton of research around that. Particularly the book I like, Gabor Mate, When the Body Starts to Say No, When the Body Says No. And yeah, and self-harm, thank you. Someone, and absolutely, what we see when people are continually frustrated or angry, that we can come out in actions of self-harm. Yeah. Or it comes out as rage. So when that pot has been bubbling long enough and we don't have the resources or the information or the ways of being able to navigate it, it can also come out as explosive rage, right? And that's where things start to get destructive, and to yourself and to other people. So when I came into the counseling area, the scene, about a quarter of a century ago, there was a practice that people used for anger that involved, hitting a pillow, taking it out physically by hitting a pillow, or it was mostly like, banging a pillow or going to the top of a mountain. There was something, I'm just trying to think the name of it, primal scream. And screaming and yelling it out of your body and taking it out physically. Well, it turns out that that was not actually too healthy, because that practice, what we practice, tends to get stronger. And when we take it out in that way, hitting a pillow, we run the risk of re-traumatizing ourselves and lighting up that part of the brain associated with rage. And then we just keep on practicing that. The other thing that kind of practice does is it bypasses the actual experience, the felt experience of anger in your body. So when you see road rage, you can bet that someone is not present with the muscle tension, the shortness of breath, the tension, the fear that's in their body. They're bypassing, and it's normal and natural, by the way. So don't be beating yourself up if that's something that you've experienced. You are not alone in that, and I'm so glad that you're here. So here's the thing. Anger is a normal and natural emotion that we actually need in order to survive, in order to protect ourselves, our children, the things that we love, but can also be a symptom of something else. I'll just pop this in here. It can also be a symptom of depression, unresolved trauma. It can absolutely come up as a symptom of alcoholism or other addiction. And it can also be a symptom of the frustration of having something like a diagnosis of ADHD. It's extremely frustrating. And many more things that we are about to explore. I didn't want to miss that part. Repressed anger is really important to attend to, because it can be harmful to your health. The University of Michigan study showed that those more likely to repress anger in their bodies about unjust events were more likely to get bronchitis, heart attacks, and die earlier. So there's definitely been a connection made between repressed anger and manifestations such as heart attacks. The mind and the body, they work together. They are the same system. So it can feel dangerous for many reasons, but done effectively can provide so much release and peace, even if the situation or the person that you harbor anger or resentment at is no longer living. Okay? So it doesn't have to be a direct expression to that person or that situation. It's more like a tending to the garden of your own nervous system and what you're growing. Anger really helps us to clarify our values, what is truly important to us, what we want to stand up for, what we will move forward to protect. And it can also be a cover-up for deeper, more vulnerable emotions, as we talked about. So the truth is, again, anger is an energy like any other emotion. Unfortunately, it comes with a very bad rap that has made it quite distorted. It does happen naturally in your body. You know, we don't purposefully go out and create it. We see children having temper tantrums when their needs aren't met. We see young babies, you know, I don't know if they would term it anger, but, you know, crying, that expression to have their needs for survival met. It's looking for something. It happens in the body before the mind. And this is important because a lot of anger management programs will tell you to change your thoughts. That's part of the picture, but it's absolutely not the whole picture, because the mind gets it later and the mind tries to make sense of it and keeps it going with a story until it's felt. They did that to me. I can't believe they did that to me. Can you believe it? And then it goes, and the mind will try to make sense of it and try to resolve it, but it's not always that effective. It does have an important message, just like any other emotion does. And believe it or not, it's neither good nor bad. It is simply a messenger. So if you imagine driving and your dashboard, you know, the lights start going on that tell you, alert you that something's wrong in the car. It's a similar thing. It's sending a message to look under the hood and find out what the problem is here. Why are the lights going off? You can see this guy in his car. He's obviously triggered that something's up. Perhaps his safety is being threatened. Perhaps, you know, that's, you know, a life or death type of thing. Maybe he's even late for work, which can also show up in the same way in your body. All kinds of things. So when you can play all the keys, and I talk about this a lot in classes, of all the emotions, the music or the flow in your body starts to feel more easeful. Because when we are blocking these so-called, what we call negative emotions, such as anger, shame, guilt, frustration, we also block ourselves off to experiences of joy, delight, pleasure. So we're blocking one end, we're also blocking the other end. And when we can slowly and safely start to learn to play the whole keys of the piano, we can, you know, start to create more music, more flow, less pain, less tension in our body. So when does anger management not work? So here's the thing. When people get triggered into anger, and I know someone mentioned earlier, anger without awareness, it's really common. The thinking brain actually goes offline. So in that moment, you're not going to be able to think clearly. You're probably not going to be saying what you really want to say. This part of your brain, you may have heard something called the amygdala hijack. And when that part of your brain starts to light up that says alert, threat, danger, it's like we literally flip our lid, and inside there's this part of our brain that, if I had you under a brain scan, would be full on alert. And what happens with that, called the fight, flight, freeze response, is that we go into a survival stress response. Okay. So at that point, there is no thinking your way out of that. And that's where we have to bring in the body and different practices, because survival and protection in the nervous system in the form of anger will win every single time. We're here primarily to survive, right? Underlying trauma lies in the nervous system, and no amount of changing your thoughts will heal this in the moment. So I really want to make that clear, because I have so many people that I've seen that say, I just can't change my beliefs, my thinking in that moment. I just lose it. That's because your thinking brain has actually been hijacked, and your body, your nervous system, feels in danger. And it's the same response as the pain response. Because pain is, if you remember from other classes, is also here to protect us. And it just leaves us feeling more guilty and ashamed because we have flown off the handle once again and start, either trying to like put the pieces back together or kind of recoil into a place of feeling guilty. Also, when you are only working with thoughts and beliefs, it doesn't work without including the body. Hence, the safety brakes that we did earlier. When you are only focusing on the symptoms, so I have to manage my anger, I have to manage my response, I have to take a time out. There's nothing wrong with that, and absolutely sometimes that's what's needed. But that's a top-down approach. And when we look at the root causes, we're really talking about a bottom-up, what's happening in my body right now? How can I slow it down so I can actually see this train crash coming? How many people would like to be able to do that? Just kind of slow it down here, so I might be able to make a different choice. So let's just quickly look at perceptions. It's kind of three parts I'm going to take you through here. One is we're actually just going to look at our perceptions of what should be and what happens when things are not as we expect. And then we're going to move through the body and actually practice some practices that are there to create safety in your body when you feel like you're under threat. Okay. And by the way, this webinar is going to go till 7:30 tonight. And it is being recorded, just so, yes, it is being recorded. I just had to check that, just so you know. Mm-hmm. Yes, so our perceptions and what lens are we looking through? Yeah, so I want to give you an example of quite a long time ago when I was working actually for the Canadian Mental Health Association. And I worked in a town in Northern Ontario where there were a lot of factories, a lot of mills, paper mills being shut down. And I began to see a lot of the workers coming in because I worked for one of their programs, and to help them deal with some of the losses and the change in life that they were experiencing. And what I started to notice was that every worker that I saw had a different lens on the same situation. So some of the workers were coming in, they felt they were angry. They were angry at the company. They were just angry at the way things had been managed. And, we worked a lot with the anger and starting to feel more in control of their lives and making a plan. Some felt very sad. They felt sad at the loss of their work and the loss of their vocation. And some felt very afraid. They were afraid of the financial instability. They were afraid of how are they going to provide for their families, the loss of income, fear of the future. This was the same situation, but with different nervous system responses, different perceptions of the exact same situation. So I say that just to remember that your lens is your lens. These are some of the expectations that can really, you can let me know in the chat, what are some of your shoulds that make you feel angry? Such as, I should be happy. That can create some tension when there is a world out there telling us that we should be happy when actually we're not. And it's not normal to be happy all the time because we have the whole range of emotions. People should not let me down. That might create some tension and some anger. Those people, they should be nice. They should be kind. We would like that to be the case, but it's not always the case. They should include me. I should be included when we're not always, we're not always included. We don't always fit in. Great. I see some of these. Should be able to go to work each day. I should be able to go to work each day. Why can't I go to work each day? I feel let down a lot. I feel let down by other people. By doctors. Yes, absolutely. Yeah. When we're not getting the answers, not getting the treatment, we might not be being treated the way that feels heard and respectful. I should not feel pain. Just want you to let that perception, that lens just sink in there for a moment. And every one of us would like to be in a place where we're not feeling pain. But when we are, that expectation, I shouldn't feel this way, can actually get in the way of our healing. It can create a lot of anger, a lot of tension, a lot of resistance to what is actually happening. Okay, and I saw someone right at the very beginning talk about meditation. And that absolutely, meditation, deep breathing can absolutely help to move through some of that. I should not be disappointed. When we are disappointed, we are disappointed. And that's just a fact. We'd like not to be, but it is a part of life and we can't prevent that sometimes from happening. And disappointment might be present. Oops, repeated that. They should include me. He should behave in a certain way. They should, she should, he should, they should behave in a certain way, but they're not. So how do I move through that resistance to the fact that they are behaving in that way? She shouldn't embarrass or humiliate me. I feel embarrassed or humiliated. That's a tricky one. When we go to the anger is they shouldn't do that. The healing is I feel embarrassed. I feel humiliated. That's difficult because humiliation, we often very much lash out with anger. But we can get stuck in these perceptions. Do you see what I'm saying? We can get stuck without looking at what actually is here, what actually is happening emotionally in our own bodies. So shoulds can be a cause of anger, and they can also be a bypass. You're going to get the recording for this. So if you need to go over it again, don't feel like you need to kind of take it all in right now. Notice your shoulds, and instead the healing comes into coming into what is right now. What is present for me right now? And I will mention that right now, there seems to be a lot of distress and a lot of anger moving through bodies and that I'm working with, and things are shifting really quickly. So I have had so many people in the last week tell me that, wow, I've been feeling so much anger one day. I just felt so much anger, and I woke up the next morning and it wasn't there anymore. So I want you to know that if you're feeling that right now, if you move and let it be and let it well, we'll move into this now. Recognize it, notice it. You might be in a shift towards something else. All right. Let me just check in here. Oh, good. I've been taking photos the whole time. Oh dear, I'm so sorry. I should have mentioned you're getting a recording. So don't feel like you need to take it all in. Being not heard. Oh, when you have a damaged vocal cord. Oh, my, being told I make them angry because they cannot hear me. Well, yeah, that sounds very frustrating, Deb. And that's their anger and their frustration. It sounds like something that's way beyond your control. Yeah. So when you have this kind of situation, what is this guy believing? So I'm imagining, and you might imagine, that he is saying to the other person, well, all kinds of words, but also, what the heck are you doing? You shouldn't be driving so fast. You shouldn't have cut me off. And maybe there's other shoulds that he's saying. And what is actually factually happening in him and around him? So let's see if we can just reframe this one. He's driving. Somebody is moving fast. Let's say cut him off. So another car moves in front of him. Inside of him, he's instantly shortness of breath, tight chest, tense muscles, blood pressure rises, heart rate through the roof, action to protect. The action that he's doing to protect is to yell, perhaps swear out of the window. Okay. So in this moment, those are the facts of what is happening. He is moving instantly to protect himself, and it happens in a split second. If he was to slow that down for a moment, he might now he might carry it on with the story through the rest of his day, tell everybody, and just be angry when he gets to work. Or he might start to open his fists, relax his muscle tension, start to gain some safety back into his body, and feel where he's sitting in his body, and let that anger, it might rise, and let it start to settle. Okay, so the shoulds that he's believing are that car should not be driving that way. And the reaction that he's having is that protective response of anger. It's really normal when you feel like your life has been threatened, right? And that same reaction comes the exact same reaction comes when we don't feel heard, when we don't feel validated, when we feel like our feelings don't count, like we're not important, like we don't matter. This exact same reaction happens in our body, although there might be nothing to move towards to protect yourself, right? So it's not like you need to swerve out of the way, you're just left with this feeling. So we're going to learn from someone who I always thought was like the least angry person on the planet, Mahatma Gandhi. You can bet he was angry about the situation that was happening in India at the time. And he says, we should not be ashamed of anger. It's a very good and a very powerful thing that motivates us. But what we need to be ashamed of is the way that we somehow abuse the energy. And he uses the word abuse, but I would say that we're just not aware of it, and we can use it in a very destructive manner, right? Anger, and then his grandson also chimes in. Anger is like, and I like this, it's like electricity. It can send a jolt. It's just as useful and it's just as powerful, but only when we use it intelligently and effectively. And I would add to get our needs met and to heal the underlying causes. So I'm going to just stop for a moment. And if everybody just wants to take a safety break, and when I just putting on the brakes here, take 3 deep breaths. Release muscle tension. Okay. Shake it out if you need to. It's a pretty intense discussion right now. Orient to your environment, right? Look around. Let your eyes perceive that right now you're safe. And if your nervous system is asking for water, to go to the bathroom, to stretch, let it know that you've seen it, you've heard it, and meet its need. Again, you're sending a message of safety to your body. I've got you. I see you. I hear you. Let me just check in here. Yeah. You can absolutely do that anytime, anywhere. And please, I've been teaching breathing for a good 20 years now, and I still do, because it's the most accessible and one of the most powerful ways to press pause. You can do it anytime, anywhere. It's free, and it brings in all kinds of oxygen to your body. And it also helps you to get into a different part of your brain where you might be able to think or see a little bit more clearly when you feel hijacked. All right. So how are you using your anger to move towards what matters to you, to what you feel is being unjust, needs to be protected in yourself or another? In other words, moving the energy, or to make yourself feel worse, blaming yourself, blaming other people, fuming in resentment, silent treatment, or raging. In other words, keeping it stuck. And again, here, there's no judgment. We just really want to create lots of awareness, which is why I'm going so deeply into this. So what is the gift of anger? Why do we have it? What would a world be like if we didn't have anger? Anger says something needs to be protected, even if it's just a feeling of feeling criticized. Okay. What lines have been crossed? Where do I feel threatened? So the little pictures over here, if anger is a very useful emotion, and you can bet that if your child is being bullied or has been hurt, that it should trigger a feeling of anger in your body as you rise to protect. If you feel strongly, for example, about the environment, you might feel very angry about trees being cut down or climate change. It points you towards what you really value. And that's important. Big movements have come out of anger, such as Mothers Against Drunk Drivers. That was spurred by the anger of mothers and fathers whose children had been killed by drunk drivers. So without that anger, nothing would have really happened. This fellow over here, he's got a smile on his face. But if you lose your job or you hate your job, you are going to feel angry because it doesn't feel just. And something needs to be protected, namely you and your livelihood. So anger is a very natural response to feelings of hurt, betrayal, loss, embarrassment, and a signal of an unmet need. So let's pause for a moment and ask yourself, what loss might have made you feel angry? And that might be a loss of function, a loss of finances, but it can also be a perceived loss. just as powerful. Maybe a loss of feeling safe, either maybe perhaps feeling safe in safe in a relationship, safe in a job, maybe a loss of feeling of security, a loss of a relationship, job, loss of your time. Often when there's too many demands coming at you, you start to feel stressed, frustrated, angry at the loss of your time, your loss of control. Being listened to, being acknowledged, or that can be a loss of respect, or a feeling of crossed boundaries. When something line has been crossed, so it doesn't feel comfortable for you anymore, you're likely going to have a feeling of anger. Okay? And again, to ask what needs to be protected here. Okay, so I actually put in a built-in a safety break here. Let's take a moment, shake it out. If anything's coming up for you right now, I do a lot. This is something that animals do when they've been under stress for a long time. They shake out the cortisol and the adrenaline that's accumulated in their bodies. They already know what to do. And, if you're by yourself, you can shake out your whole body. And it's no small action doing a shake. You can sweep it out. So self-touch, sweeping it out through your arms, down through your legs, the drain pipes of your body has also been shown to calm the nervous system and reduce adrenaline, cortisol, and increase oxytocin and serotonin, which are the more of the safety feel-good chemicals. Tap it out. This tapping bilateral, which means crossing the midline, tapping it, moving through it, so the anger might increase, and then tap it out the other side. And always, when in doubt, breathe it out. Exhale. Okay, those are I want you to think about all these times. Take many times taking a safety break. Yes, you need to protect you, and this energy can move mountains. Yes, no question. Yeah. Okay, so somebody just says to me, and I'm just going to just comment on that. Why am I crying? Because when so normal and so healthy, so good to cry. Every tear is a release of something that's held tightly in your body. When I teach breathing and we start to take some breaths, we start to relax through the body, inevitably tears come. When we start to look under the lid of anger, inevitably tears come. And every tear takes you closer to healing. So I in a world that doesn't really embrace that, I'm telling you the opposite, that crying is restorative recovery. So if anger is just another emotion, then why does it feel so complicated? Again, past conditioning, beliefs, media all around us rarely portrays anger in a healthy way. I don't see it modeled very well. So I'd ask, who here was taught a healthy expression of anger that took responsibility for it and directed it in a direct and productive way? I would be really curious. So if you're having difficulty or issues with anger, that seems to be pretty common. So it's not the anger, it's what you do with it, or in other words, how you relate to it. And I hope that's becoming clear. Yeah, so we use safety. We use a word called titration, which is taking small doses of anger at a time so we don't overwhelm an already sensitized system, to establish healthy relationship with anger and use it to mobilize yourself. And a healthy society is not an anger-free society. It's one where we take full responsibility for our own emotions and our beliefs. and everyone has a different perception. You are special. You are unique, and your feelings, your perception is yours, and it matters. It matters and it's important. I want to do this exercise with you now. How's everybody doing out there? Are we okay? Do we need a little bit of a break, a little bit of a shake? This exercise is to get familiar with how anger shows up in your body, where it shows up, so that we can start to befriend these sensations, to recognize them in the moment more and more often before we get hijacked. I'll stop there. So wherever you are, you might see some messages coming through about situations that are causing some anger, triggering some anger in people tonight. I want you to choose one situation in your life that's about, I don't know, about a 3 or 4, maybe a 5 out of 10 in terms of the anger scale. Maybe an irritation you had, an annoyance. And if you know, this is probably the most important part of the webinar tonight. So as you remember that situation, you might just recall, you might recall really quickly what was said, who was there, how it made you feel in that moment. And just slow it down with a few deep breaths. And even as you imagine that, you can, if you can, just slow it down into slow motion. And there might be a particular moment that stands out for you, or a word or a particular tone of voice that happened. And in that moment, without judgment, without the prison guards present, notice what rises in your body in terms of a sensation. So for some people, it's a tightness in your chest, tightness in your neck, might be a feeling of nausea, might be some tight shoulders. Just notice what I call your own fingerprint of how anger shows up in you. And that's that energy of anger. So I would love to know what you're noticing right now. You might have noticed a tension in your fists, but to get to know your own, to slow it down and notice, this is really important, how it shows up in your body. You might notice right away what beliefs came up there. They shouldn't do that. How dare they? Just notice those thoughts, come back to the sensations in your body. And you might just touch in. You might just put a toe in and touch in and just start to notice a little bit of discomfort. Okay? And then come back to your breath right now. Come back to a deeper, slower breath. You're still here. You're here. Feel your feet on the floor. You're safe. You're safe. You're noticing that sensation of anger in your body. Now I'm going to ask you, if it wasn't possible in that moment to feel anger, what might you be feeling underneath? This is an exercise you can also do on your own and at another time. If it wasn't possible to have that lid of protective anger, what might you be feeling underneath? It might be sadness, it might be grief, it might be worry, it might be guilt, it might be uncertainty. Just notice. It's just information. If there was something underneath, You can even put your hands on your belly because it's underneath your chest. It's underneath the tightness of your chest. And that's where your healing lies, in those, feeling those emotions. If it was just up top in your anger, in that feeling of what needs to be protected, we can work with that as well. So in the moment when anger rises, we're moving towards the home base here. Notice what you feel and be honest with yourself, in yourself. Permission to feel what you feel, okay, without minimizing. It's just what happens to be here for whatever reason. Don't try to figure it out. Get safe in your body. Okay. Using those safety breaks. Taking intentional timeouts for at least 20 minutes. We need at least 20 minutes, maybe even more, to come out of the hijack and into some sense of safety where we can actually even think or speak clearly. Don't be hard on yourself that just, take more than a moment. But use that time intentionally to move through releasing the energy in your body. This is where most people bypass. Hint, don't just try and calm yourself down. Oh, I just need to calm down. I need to calm down. That feels very stressful. So you might take the 20 minutes to move it through your body. You might move, you might breathe, you might walk, you might stretch, you might shake. And every time you're able to move through that anger, you're going to feel it less and less and less, because now you know what to do. Your body's like, oh, we're taking a different route now. Thank goodness. Because that other one was really upsetting. And then once you've done that, once you've moved it through, you can't just shut it down. Once you've moved it through, then do deeper, slower breathing until your nervous system regulates. I hope this is making sense. Notice your impulse. Sometimes we feel like we want to lash out, we want to fight, or we want to lash in on ourselves. We want to flight, run away, just curl up, just avoid conflict. Just notice that. Okay? And sometimes you might still do those things, right? There's no like graduation at the end of tonight. Or we move into a freeze, where this is a whole other thing to unpack. We should do a webinar. It's where we feel confused, we feel tongue-tied, we feel overwhelmed, or we move into an appease, which is making everybody feel better, making other people, calming down other people to make everything okay. That's another nervous system response. Okay. That's where we get into people pleasing and, bypassing our own needs. This impulse itself, there's a lot in this webinar tonight, by the way. Like this is life-changing stuff. We're gonna have to do a follow-up. This impulse needs time and attention. And again, the bypassing would be the blame, the yelling, the road rage, going to sleep, yelling on Facebook, getting on Facebook, criticizing other people. Rather than noticing what's rising in your own nervous system in the moment. That's where your healing truly lies. I can give you all the tools in the book, but until we really notice what's happening and really embrace what's in your core, the other stuff will just temporarily change things. So the fight, freeze, fight, flight, freeze, and appease are nervous system responses. So what if we took this impulse and took great care of it? Great care of our impulse and great care of ourselves in that moment. I need a few minutes. I need a few minutes to manage here. This might be what some communication might look like. And you might say that to yourself. You know, you might say it to yourself before you jump on Facebook. I feel overwhelmed. Just to notice that. I feel really tense right now. Notice yourself or tell someone else. I feel scared right now. You can express it to someone else, but certainly notice it in yourself. I really need to talk. You know, say someone slights you, or maybe a good friend, and you feel safe enough to say, I really need to talk. I need some clarification here. Did you say, am I hearing this correctly? I feel really disappointed. And again, that may be something to go away and feel and heal, or it might be something to say, I feel really hurt. This is honesty. I feel really hurt. So that's in the moment. Now we're going to talk everyday anger care. To find opportunities every single day to slow down and use the safety brake. Remember, we're creating anger and pain, create a feeling of danger, of threat in the body. We need to counteract it with the safety brake, finding safety in our own bodies. And that might mean through eating well, through improving our sleep habits. It might mean in some gentle movement, some walking, being in nature. But absolutely the shaking, the breathing, the tapping, the sweeping. Those are good for first aid, and they're also good for everyday use. Notice where these things show up around you and in you. Start to really be like a detective. Where is your agitation, your irritations, your annoyances? Where are they coming from? And you might take a deep dive into the iceberg of what they mean to you. You can inquire, what are my anger triggers? What is it that I think should happen that's not happening? And again, we're not trying to change anybody or any situation outside of ourselves right now. We're tending to the garden of our own anger. Is there a deeper underlying emotion, a grief, a longing, a sadness, other that wants to be felt? Sometimes there's emotions that are just yearning to be felt. They're yearning to be, but we haven't been trained to actually find them. Is there a yearning or a longing? Okay, here's where it also gets important. In other words, is there a need for connection? Is there a need for quiet? All these kids are driving me crazy. What's my need? I need some quiet. How can I find that? I'm going to go take a walk. Is there a need for rest? So irritated. I have a need for some rest. Is there a need for a feeling of safety? Is there a need for a hug, for a connection? If there's no one around, if it's not a place to have that met by someone else, I want you to start thinking about meeting your own needs. So really noticing the anger, noticing what need is not being met. And when you notice that need, you can tell yourself, no wonder I'm angry. No wonder I'm angry if I have this need that's not being met for safety or connection. You might find that not with the person that you're actually in an interaction with. You might find it with someone else. You might find it with your pet. But the first thing to do is to actually identify what is the unmet need. Gosh, if we were all doing this, I tell you, this would be a different world. Notice, I'm feeling anger right now. Permission to feel what you feel. Do I need to shift my perception? Is there an action to take? And we're revisiting what we talked about in the very first part of this webinar. Yes or no? If there's an action to take, you might take it through healthy communication or tending your own garden, looking after yourself, finding safety, or no. If the answer is no, then it's healing a deeper feeling, or it's meeting your own unmet need. Is there something to heal? Find ways to intentionally work with anger. All right, we've only got one more slide after this. Please, let's just safety break. We're moving towards the end here. Sweep it out, tap it out. 3 deep breaths. Notice what's present here for you right now without judgment. We don't need the prison guards right now, without judgment. It just happens to be here. You happen to be perhaps experiencing irritation or anger. It's not who you are. Self-forgiveness. You are a learning, growing human being who experiences this universal emotion of anger. Releasing muscle tension through relaxation, movement, journaling. There's been a lot of research on journaling, letting it go with your pen and paper to express angry feelings. But there's a really important caveat here. Don't censor yourself, don't edit yourself, and don't reread it. It's the process of expression out of you onto the paper and throw it away. And this is one of the things we work on in our emotional freedom class on Tuesdays that we're going to be running again in the new year. And the research around emotional expression and reducing chronic pain is actually quite compelling. And if you're interested in that research, I'm happy to pass it along to you. This is no small tool that you're learning here for your toolbox. Talk with a counselor to heal underlying trauma. There's a lot of untreated trauma flying around in us and in the world, particularly right now. And it doesn't mean that not the big T traumas, although maybe, if you went to war or you suffered an assault or one of those big things, but it's also those tiny everyday traumas. It could be the trauma of being shamed or neglected as a child. Anyway, whatever, there's the small T traumas as well, that when we start to heal those, we absolutely become less angry. It's not your fault, right? It's not your fault. Attend to all the ways that bring you joy and pleasure every single day. And if you've been in my mindfulness class recently, you know that I'm talking about this a lot. Do not wait for your pain to disappear before you invite pleasure into your life. Pleasure can be an antidote to anger and an antidote to pain. So little things, having things nearby you that create pleasure. It might be a candle, it might be some essential oils, it might be a good food, it might be a nice cup of coffee, it might be smelling flowers. Those all activate another part of your brain. Pile them on, because God knows we pile on a lot of anger, don't we? And a lot of worry. The other thing I wanted to mention here, and I have this trusty beanbag with me here right now, is that another thing that you can use when you feel what we talked about, that impulse, the fight, flight, freeze, stress response, to have something to squeeze and, to really sense into that energy within your body, to really squeeze it. And, you can squeeze it hard or just squeeze it in little bits to just get small doses if squeezing it a lot feels overwhelming. And then release. That can be a really effective way for releasing anger. Making sure you're eating healthy, restorative sleep, friendships that feel safe and supportive, and creativity has often been touted as an antidote to anger. All right. So I am on my last slide, and I will stick around because I can't see everybody here for any questions that may have come up. But I'll leave with a quote from Viktor Frankl, and his most famous quote from the book Man's Search for Meaning is, in between the stimulus, in other words, the triggering life situation or person or whatever it might be, and our response, our reaction to it, there is a space. In that space, in that gap, when we slow it down, is our power to choose our response. And in our response lies our growth and our freedom. And he wrote that from his experiences in the concentration camp, where he realized under the most dire circumstances, we can still learn how to respond in a way that feels in integrity for us. Again, we're human. It's trial and error. We're going to mess up, right? We're not going to get this perfect, are we? But if you can bring in now that we come to an end, just into yourself, and if you put your hands on your belly or your heart, this can make it even more powerful if it feels comfortable, to just breathe in some self-compassion for yourself and to acknowledge that you showed up here tonight to learn about something that perhaps has been distressing or troubling or even destructive in your life. And if it's something that you want to, that you have questions, you want to learn more about, please reach out. And you'll also have the recording to watch, because there was a lot in this hour and a half. I realize it was so much. So we're 5 minutes over. I know some people have to go. Please feel free to. But I'm going to stick around and answer any questions, and I'm actually I'm gonna bring in Mark here at the end to looks like you're showing up there to say a few words.
Yeah, this is one of your most amazing presentations. It is incredibly powerful. Thank you for a fantastic webinar this evening, Madeline. Yeah, wow. There is a lot to go through. Mm-hmm. Hopefully people will find some benefit from some of what you've had to say tonight. I think your message is incredibly important, but very powerful. Yeah, it's quite, good. Yeah, I feel quite dumbstruck, quite frankly. But I'm about to get swept out of the building here because the janitorial staff are now in my office in the hospital trying to clean up. So I'm trying to be calm and breathe. And the poor lady is waiting with a mop. Oh,
she's probably feeling quite angry.
She probably is.
Right now. Maybe you should forward this webinar to her. Yeah, she's probably had a lot of anger at doctors that stick around long after her shift is over.
We can be irritating, honestly. Right? We can be so annoying. But thank you very much.
You're very welcome, and welcome to everyone. And I really wish you in this very important journey that you're on, particularly the struggle with ongoing pain and the natural response of anger. But to slow it down, use some of the tools, perhaps dive underneath the iceberg, and slowly, you're going to start gaining more and more awareness about yourself and your responses, and hopefully bring in some compassion for yourself in this journey that was not your fault. We're just also human. Nobody asks for pain or distressing anger. But let your anger help you. Well, this is the last thing I'm going to say, I promise. If there is something that you feel needs to be protected, if there is a conversation that you need to have with someone, if there is a health professional that you feel you need to express yourself to. I would use all the tools, and then please join us next Monday for the follow-up webinar on healthy communication with Mary Ellen McNaughton. I really encourage you. This week, we're talking about the sensation of anger. Next week, we're moving into healthy communication, and she's going to dovetail off of what we talked about tonight. So I hope to see you next Monday here, and we'll continue this so very important discussion.
Okay, thank you and good night.
All right. Good night.
Yeah, good night, everybody.
Okay, and you're welcome, everybody. Yeah, it is, isn't it? It's so much better to be here live rather than watching it in the videos. I agree with you. Onto grief. Yes, grief. We're going to touch on that for sure next week. And anger is absolutely a stage of grief. Of course, get angry when we lose something that was valuable or that we love. Yeah. Glad that you're here. And yeah, to Paul, it's certainly not, not unusual, to feel guilty about anger. And I know there was a longer note up there from one of the participants that I didn't get to read the whole thing. Guilty about having anger, that could be a class in itself. Anger is anger. Okay? It's here, and the guilt is one of your prison guards, and usually learned at a younger age. When we can tap into the emotion of anger, we might be able to really, again, tend to the garden of our own anger. So we don't have to feel guilty about some of the actions that we might take in an angry state. Yeah, can we have this class again? I think that's probably a good idea, Paul. I really do. The recordings are all going to be uploaded onto the website. Just tap into the website under past webinars, and I'll post it up there probably tomorrow. Tiptoe like a little mouse. Yes, that's it sounds like something that was very much learned and can absolutely be moved through to what am I trying to say? To know that you are important, you matter, you get to take up space, you get to speak your truth, and that you're not responsible for other people's emotions. Just to the person that says tiptoe like a little mouse. Yeah, that's a class in itself. Mark difference in the presentation, and I hope it was a good difference, Susan. Awesome. Hope to see you guys next week. We're going to continue this discussion, and I can see from a lot of the comments that are coming into myself, we've got a lot. We've got a lot more material here to go into for some more classes. So thanks for that. And if things come up afterwards, please feel free to send them to me in an email. I go off of what you guys need, and then I either do it myself or I'll bring in speakers to do it with us. Take care. Safety break. Breathe. Move into your evening with a sense of ease and find those things that bring you pleasure. Take care, everyone. Get the key slides. Yeah. I wonder if I can send them. Susan, you might want to just send me an email. I'm happy to give you the slides. I don't know how to send a PowerPoint. other than watching the webinar? If there's certain ones, you can absolutely let me know. The other thing you can do is watch the webinar and take a screenshot of the ones that you want. That might be another way. Watch the recording and then quickly screenshot. Yeah, absolutely would help. That was a lot of meat. This was a pretty meaty night. Okay. Do you do this class again? That's what I'm hearing. I've heard that a number of times tonight already. Maybe we should continue on with our healing anger. I think you're right. This is so important, and I'll just keep talking for people that are here. The research, again, I want to emphasize around the emotional expression of anger and rage, and the treatment and healing of chronic pain is phenomenal. What we're seeing now. Particularly the last study with lower back pain, they saw results that I haven't seen too many other places. So you're spot on if you think that this is something that we need to keep talking about. And this is my area of passion and interest, as you might be able to tell. So I will definitely follow up on that. Okay, take care, everyone. Have a lovely evening and hope to see you next Monday. Bye for now.